The clock had just struck midnight when a curtain of rain descended upon the entire city. Droplets fell from electric poles. The distant barking of dogs echoed through empty streets, and occasionally lightning tore through the sky, all combining to create an inexplicable sense of unease. At this very hour, in a classified section of President Ibrahim Traoré's presidential palace, the lights in Room 7 suddenly flickered to life. This was the room reserved exclusively for reports indicating major cracks within the system or extraordinary incidents that demanded immediate attention. The clock hands seemed frozen at 12 as the door slowly creaked open. A man entered wearing civilian clothes, but the file in his hands told the entire story. Ibrahim Traoré sat upright in his chair, his posture rigid with anticipation. Before him on the table lay a map covered with red circles, markings of his covert intelligence network scattered throughout the country. His agents existed in various disguises: farmers, laborers, truck drivers, shopkeepers, and even among ordinary prisoners. Their primary responsibility was to report directly to the presidency whenever injustice, oppression, or conspiracy took root anywhere in the nation. Tonight would bring one such report, one that would shake the foundations of the political landscape in the days to come. The man presenting the file spoke in a measured tone. "Mr. President, this report comes from the Women's Correctional Facility. Prisoner number 7, Mariam Khadija, a Muslim woman from South Africa, has been held in solitary confinement for 1 year. Tonight, her condition suddenly deteriorated. When the doctor examined her, an unbelievable discovery was made. She is pregnant." These words echoed through the room like a bomb detonating. For a moment, Traoré remained silent. His eyes betrayed both shock and anger. He knew what solitary confinement meant: complete isolation. 3 locked doors, constant camera surveillance, only female staff permitted. No visits, no physical contact with anyone. Yet here, within these restrictions, a new life was growing. This wasn't just a prison scandal. This was a question mark over the entire system. Traoré struck the arm of his chair and demanded, "How is this possible? This is either the greatest failure of our system, or someone has orchestrated a major plot against us. I need the truth." The intelligence agent delivering the report hesitated before continuing. "Mr. President, all records so far appear clean. Nothing suspicious on the cameras, locks intact, no mail entry recorded. However, when the ultrasound was performed, the fetus was found to be 20 weeks developed." A storm erupted in Traoré's mind. If this news leaked, the media and foreign powers would proclaim that the country's system was collapsing. He knew that the Western world only needed an excuse to defame Africa's emerging leaders. This incident could be weaponized for exactly that purpose. He turned to another officer seated nearby and commanded, "We must do 2 things immediately. First, this news cannot leak until we've reached the truth. Second, all my agents must conduct a complete investigation of the prison's internal infrastructure. From ventilation to water lines, search everything. If there's a gap in our security, it must be exposed." The report contained another peculiar note. A prison warden had discovered a sentence carved into the solitary confinement cell wall with fingernails. The sentence was brief: "I am not alone." Reading this sent a chill through Traoré's body. He closed the file and took a deep breath. These words are not ordinary, they're a code. Either this woman is connected to some hidden power, or someone has provided her support. Whatever the truth may be, we must discover it. The atmosphere in the room grew increasingly heavy. Rain pounded against the windows with fierce intensity, as if the sky itself felt the weight of this secret. Traoré finally slammed his fist on the table and declared, "Don't treat this incident lightly. A woman's pregnancy could shake our entire administration. If this secret gets out..." He ordered that within the next 24 hours, a comprehensive report must be back on his desk. The intelligence team immediately sprang into action. As they exited the room, their footsteps in the corridor sounded like the trumpet call of war. Traoré was left alone. He gazed out the window at the falling rain and whispered under his breath, "How can life emerge in the midst of captivity? Either this is an enemy's move, or it's a secret warning us of a major storm approaching." With those words, he closed the window, but questions continued to rain through his mind like the droplets outside. Within hours of President Ibrahim Traoré's orders, his intelligence network burst into action. The women's correctional facility, which appeared from the outside to be an ordinary government building, now became a labyrinth where every room, every wall, and every door fell under suspicious scrutiny. Traoré's deployed agents infiltrated the prison in various disguises. Some posed as janitors, others as maintenance workers, and several female agents were sent in as wardens. All were given a single objective: discover how Mariam Khadija became pregnant while in solitary confinement. The first phase involved reviewing the prison's security footage. 60 days of recordings were extracted. On large monitors, hour after hour, the same static scene played repeatedly. Mariam Khadija sat in her small cell, sometimes eating, sometimes staring silently at the wall, occasionally lying on the floor. Not only did no other person approach her, not even a shadow appeared. The camera's eye revealed no visits, no violations. Every frame contained nothing but solitude. Next came the examination of locks and keys. Every door's record, every key's usage, every shift's log. Files upon files were opened, and the result remained singular: no violations. The prison's system appeared perfectly intact, as if someone had carefully hidden every trace. Now came the turn to examine food delivery records. Every plate, every bottle of water, every vitamin pill was documented, but one anomaly emerged. Several months ago, Mariam Khadija had repeatedly requested additional vitamins and supplements. At the time, this seemed ordinary. But now, with a 20-week pregnancy discovered, these requests began to appear as covert signals. During this time, one agent inspected the solitary confinement ventilation system. The small opening seemed normal enough, but upon removing the mesh, they discovered a nylon rope, plastic bag fragments, and a rusted injection needle. This discovery sent shock waves through the staff. The evidence was sent to the central laboratory. 3 days later, the report was placed on President Traoré's desk. Human semen traces have been found in the plastic bag. This sentence hammered through his consciousness. He closed the file and stated, "This is no ordinary matter. Someone has created a pathway from within the system. This is a game, but who was the player? Some high-ranking officer, a prisoner acting with outside help, or an external group?" At that very moment, another report surfaced. On Mariam Khadija's cell wall, scratched into the surface, were the words, "I am not alone." These words filled the president's heart with restlessness. He knew this wasn't merely emotion, it was a message. If Mariam was connected to some network, this posed a threat to the state. Traoré instructed his team to trace the activities of Mariam's former associates and lawyer. Every phone call, every visit, every letter must be investigated. Additionally, old building blueprints should be retrieved. Shortly afterward, colonial-era files revealed that a secret tunnel had been built beneath the prison. Although documents showed it as sealed, the question remained, was someone using it again? Now the picture became more complex. On one side were the laboratory's evidence, on another the secret of the old tunnel, and on yet another, mysterious encrypted messages. The president declared, "We are in a psychological war. This woman is not just a prisoner, she is a real symbol against the system. If we don't uncover the truth, Africa's enemy forces will weaponize this incident." The room fell silent. Everyone knew this investigation would lift the curtain on international politics beyond the prison walls. The president said solemnly, "How life was born behind walls, this secret must be solved." Several days later, a new laboratory report was placed on his desk. The blue file's cover read, "DNA match confirmed." The report stated that the DNA from the semen found in the plastic bag matched prisoner Indy Trairo. Traoré closed the file and said slowly, "Indy Trairo," an officer spoke up. "Mr. President, he's a minor prisoner, serving a 2-year sentence for a common dispute case. His record is clean. He works on electrical and maintenance tasks in the prison, never had a single complaint." Traoré leaned forward in his chair and said pointedly, "Clean or too clean?" This statement pulled the ground from beneath everyone's feet, because sometimes the most dangerous individuals are those with spotless records. He questioned further, "Do you know where Indy came from? Who he studied with? Who he's been connected to?" Agents opened files. It was discovered that Indy had once been a medical student, But after a dispute, he left the university. Then he became involved in petty crimes and was eventually caught in one case. The story seemed straightforward and ordinary. Traoré narrowed his eyes and revealed, "I remember when I expanded my network, I sent some young men to various positions. Indy was one of them. He was my own man." The room froze. The president's own agent being named was no less than an explosion. A senior officer stated, "If Indy truly was your agent, then either he has betrayed you, or he's been caught in a larger web." Traoré struck the table with his hand. "That's exactly the question. Did my man become a traitor, or was he used? And if he was used, by whom?" Further investigation revealed that Mariam and Indy never had direct contact. They couldn't see each other or touch. Yet through the ventilation openings, a connection was established. They would write sentences on small pieces of paper at night, sometimes give light knocks. Then one day, Mariam sent Indy a message. "Before I die, I only want to become a mother." This sentence struck Indy's conscience like lightning. He knew this was illegal. Life-threatening danger could follow. But still, he had done it all. Traoré read the report while taking deep breaths. So Indy hadn't even touched her. He simply provided the material, and Mariam herself introduced it into her body. The room grew heavier with understanding. On one hand, the absence of physical relations. On the other, the president's own agent being involved. Now a new conspiracy door had opened. Did Mariam do all this out of her own stubbornness? Or had someone deliberately trapped Indy to weaken the president's network? Rain was falling outside the window. The president said, "Sometimes the enemy uses our closest people." If this is a conspiracy, then this isn't just about a woman becoming pregnant. It's an attack on my leadership. At that moment, the decision was made to bring Indy forward immediately. Because sometimes the truth isn't on paper. It's in the eyes. In the prison's interrogation room. Heavy table, old files, walls stained with dampness. A rust-covered fan, this was the place where the moment President Traoré had been intensely awaiting would arrive. After Indy's name surfaced, another question emerged. Where did Mariam Khadija stand in all this? Was she the central player or a pawn in someone's conspiracy? The door opened. Two female officers brought Indy in, hands bound in chains, but in his eyes was a calmness that no ordinary prisoner's eyes would hold. He sat in the chair and began staring at the wall. The interrogator asked, "You were in solitary confinement. Contact with any male prisoner was impossible. How did all this happen?" Indy raised his head and spoke in a moderate but clear voice. "I purchased my destiny." This answer was ambiguous, neither confession nor denial. Then came the question, "Did Indy Prastio have physical relations with you?" Indy shook his head with a slight smile. "No, he never even touched me." The officers were astonished. If there was no relationship, then how was there a child? An elderly officer shouted angrily, "This is all drama! How is there a child?" Indy closed his eyes. After a few moments, he explained, "Several months ago, when I went near the solitary block for electrical system repairs, I heard a faint cough. Out of curiosity, I approached the ventilation and found a piece of paper. Before I die, I want to become a mother." The room's breathing stopped. Indy continued, "At first I thought it was a joke. I didn't respond. The next night another paper came. If God won't forgive me, perhaps a child's smile will become my testimony." My sister's face began spinning in my mind. She who barely escaped being victimized by an addict. "Because of that incident, I committed assault and received the sentence that brought me here." Mariam's words reminded me of that same fear. Indy's voice began to tremble. "I spent many nights restless. Finally, I stole an injection from the medical storage room. I placed my bodily fluid in a plastic bag, tied a nylon rope, and threw it through the ventilation. Mariam did the rest herself. I never touched her, never forced her." The room sank into silence. An officer exclaimed, "What kind of crime is this?" The president, who was listening via video link, raised his hand for silence. "Did you know this was breaking the law?" Indy bowed his head and admitted, "Yes, but her words kept beating inside me. Before I die, I want to become a mother." Perhaps this would be my first good deed in captivity. The president closed his eyes. This wasn't a crime. It was a confession of conscience. Humanity and law had come face to face. When Mariam was brought to the interrogation room, chains bound her hands, but in her eyes was a peace that no ordinary prisoner's eyes would contain. She sat in the chair and began looking at the wall. The interrogator asked, "You were in solitary confinement. Contact with a male prisoner was impossible. How did all this happen?" Mariam raised her head and spoke in a moderate but clear voice. "I purchased my fate." This answer was ordinary, neither confession nor denial. Then came the question, "Did Indy Prastio have physical relations with you?" Mariam shook her head with a slight smile. "No, he never even touched me." The officers were stunned. If there was no relationship, then how was there a child? An elderly officer shouted in anger, "This is all drama! How is there a child?" Mariam closed her eyes. After a few moments, she said, "This child is my last prayer. I have committed sins, but the right to become a mother before I die is mine." These words fell upon everyone like a weight. The president, listening via video link, leaned back in his chair. This woman wasn't merely a prisoner. She had weaponized her pain. Mariam's gaze fixed on the camera as if addressing the president directly. "I didn't force Indy, didn't threaten him. I only said one sentence. Before I die, I want to become a mother," and he helped. An officer stated, "All this is against the law. You will receive additional punishment." Mariam laughed bitterly and responded, "Since I've been here, every breath is a crime, every moment is punishment. Now I'm not afraid of any punishment. If the child lives, perhaps God will forgive me." Then they asked about the sentence written on the wall. "I am not alone," Mariam said softly. "Yes, I wrote it because I truly am not alone. There is life in my womb." The officers looked at each other. Mariam was no longer just a prisoner. She had become a symbol. Her every word felt larger than the laws of captivity. The president heard all this and took a deep breath. On one side was the law, on the other, humanity, a mother's last wish. Then Mariam spoke her final statement. "You can kill me. You can keep me imprisoned. But you cannot stop this child's heartbeat. This is bigger than your laws, stronger than your weapons." This statement was recorded and the report reached the president. Now, the decision was not just the prison officers. It was the president's own to determine whether to consider this a crime or a signal that would transform the system. Mariam's statement created anxiety in every corner of the prison. Her words, "This child is bigger than your laws," began echoing in every official's mind. Prison Commander Reina Devi admitted it felt like she wasn't speaking with a prisoner, but with a perspective itself. President Traoré also stopped while reviewing files. He realized this was no longer just an individual's case, but a question mark over the state system itself. Division arose among the officers. One group maintained that Mariam had used Indy. This was romantic drama. She should receive severe punishment. The second group argued that despite solitary confinement, all this happened. This wasn't merely a game of desire. Perhaps some internal hand was involved, and the matter was much broader. The classified report presented to the president stated, "This prison is no longer just a prison. It has become a laboratory for enemies where they are testing our system's weaknesses." During this time, President Traoré ordered old building blueprints of the prison. From dusty old files, a yellowed map was recovered, showing a secret tunnel from the colonial era, used in emergencies. On paper, this tunnel was sealed, but was it truly sealed? The president angrily pounded his fist on the table. This is the real crack. The enemy strikes exactly where we assume everything is closed. The investigation team was ordered to trace the tunnel. After several days of excavation, a soft spot was found in the prison's back alley. Upon removing the soil, an old, foul-smelling passage was discovered. Fresh rope marks and scratching evidence were found on the walls. The report stated that while the tunnel was dilapidated, some sections remained usable. Mariam Khadija possibly made secret contact through this route. Meanwhile, Indy Prastio's statement maintained he only sent material through ventilation. Now the question arose, if the tunnel was used, did Mariam receive external help? Some official or powerful group wanting to defame the system? The president declared, "This conspiracy isn't limited to the prison's four walls. If one prisoner in solitary confinement can use both tunnel and ventilation, then traitors exist within our ranks. They must be found. Prison Commander Raina Devi wrote in her diary, "Mariam Khadija's peaceful eyes terrify me. She knows something hidden from us, and that is her real weapon." The president ordered the investigation divided into two parts: complete examination of the internal tunnel and external contacts, and comparative analysis of Indy and Mariam's statements. Then he spoke. "This woman and this child are not a prison problem. They are a secret. If we understand it, we'll understand the enemy's intentions. If we don't understand it, this very secret will drown us." The discovery of the secret tunnel made the matter more serious. The president knew the game had now spread to foreign powers. He was bent over files when another report was placed before him: the lawyer's foreign activities. Mariam's lawyer was apparently an ordinary person. But classified surveillance revealed that in the past 2 weeks he had sent emails 3 times to foreign NGOs, containing details about Mariam's pregnancy, prison conditions, and specifics. Moreover, some material had already reached Western media. If the news fully leaked, it could become an international headline: "Pregnant prisoner in Africa's strictest prison, ? Over the system." This sentence thundered through the president's mind. He knew Western media only needed an excuse. If the news went public, African system justice and women's rights would all come under debate. That very night, an emergency meeting was called at the presidential palace. Rain continued falling steadily. In the room were ministers, the security chief, and heads of intelligence agencies. The justice minister stated, "If the news leaks, our judicial system will become the target of international ridicule. The lawyer should be arrested immediately." The second minister countered, "If we arrest the lawyer, media will create more noise that we're suppressing freedom of expression. Caution is necessary." The president silenced both. "This isn't just the lawyer's problem, it's a psychological war. The enemy is defaming us from outside. We must fight on 2 fronts: find the truth and control the narrative." During this time, whispers had already begun in foreign media. A French newspaper ran a small story: "Woman imprisoned in African country suddenly pregnant." Questions arise. The story was small, but the president knew this was just the beginning. Tomorrow this would become a human rights case, a United Nations resolution, and a media weapon. The president ordered the intelligence agency to conduct complete surveillance of the lawyer's calls, emails, and contacts. He also instructed preparation of a statement, not to hide lies, but to keep truth under control. Then he declared, "If this news goes out, we will turn it into our strength. We'll show the world that this woman is not just a prisoner, but a symbol of life despite the system's strictness." Prison Commander Raina Devi sent the president a classified note: "Mr. President, I am an officer, bound by law, but this woman's peaceful eyes disturb me. If the world sees these eyes, they won't see a prisoner, they'll see a mother." This note put the president into deeper thought. He realized this wasn't just administrative turmoil, it had become every person's internal crisis. That same night, another report was placed on the president's desk. An agent reported that fresh footprints were found near the secret tunnel, coming from outside to inside. The president said quietly, "So this game isn't just between Indy and Mariam. Some larger network wants this news to spread worldwide." Late at night, President Traoré made a decision. Now is the time to turn the game around. Tomorrow, when media asks questions, we won't answer. We'll tell our own story. A story that transforms this secret into our weapon. The rain showed no signs of stopping, as if the sky itself wanted to wash away this secret. But this secret had now taken deep roots in the ground. That night fell upon the prison as if the sky had unleashed its fury. Thundering clouds, flashing lightning, and torrential rain painted the atmosphere like a picture of apocalypse. The rain pounding on the old tin roof sounded like thousands of drums beating simultaneously. In solitary confinement, Mariam Khadija's labor pains began. At 3 a.m., a warden called through the intercom, "Commander, prisoner number 7's contractions have started." The entire prison system sprang into action. Heavy doors opened. Keys clinked and footsteps echoed. Mariam was laid on a stretcher, her face covered in sweat, breathing irregularly, but in her eyes remained the light of determination. "Save my child," she gasped. The medical room had transformed into an emergency labor room. Dr. Bagus Santoso began preparations with the nurses. The nurses' hands were trembling. The thunder's roar and flickering lights made the atmosphere even more terrifying. President Traoré was receiving moment-by-moment updates through the intelligence network. He simply said, "At any cost, the child must be born alive and safe." In the medical room, screams, instructions, and struggle created a storm. The doctor's voice kept echoing. Deep breath, just a little more. Mariam bit her lip in agony, cracked her knuckles, held her breath. Then came a moment when the electricity completely went out. The room plunged into darkness. Only Mariam's groans could be heard. Then in the emergency light's pale yellow glow, her face appeared like someone on a sacred mission. After an hour of continuous struggle, one final scream, and then a tiny baby girl's first cry, the doctor cleaned the baby and weighed her. 2.7 kilograms, completely healthy. She was placed in Mariam's arms. Mariam's tears fell on her daughter's face. She said, "My daughter, you are alive. You are not my sin. You are my forgiveness." Everyone's hearts trembled in the room. Commander Reina Devi couldn't hide her tears. She remembered when her own child had passed away within hours of birth. When the president received the report, he closed his eyes. According to law, Mariam's death sentence was now postponed. But in the president's mind was only one image, a mother giving birth to new life in captivity. He said softly, "This cry isn't just a baby girl's, it's this land's, where even between oppression and law, life finds a way." That night, the baby girl's voice echoed through every corner of the prison. Guards, officers, even prisoners stopped to listen. For the first time, Mariam was smiling. A weak smile, eyes closing. But her arms held her daughter firmly. She kept whispering, "Now I am not alone. Never again." The rain had stopped, but at the prison that night remained. The morning sun brought an ordinary day for prisoners, but for the state, an extraordinary day. Mariam's daughter was no longer just a baby. She had become the center of law, politics, and international pressure. According to the Criminal Code, Section 35, no pregnant prisoner or prisoner with a child could be given the death sentence. A child could stay with the mother for at least 36 months. Mariam's scheduled execution was automatically postponed. This news was a shock to the prison staff. Several officers cried out, "This is illegal exploitation of the law." One prisoner has shaken the entire system, but some officials remained silent. They knew the reality. Now a tiny life existed who couldn't be punished. For President Traoré, the greatest test was that the matter had gained foreign attention. The European Union issued a statement. "This incident raises questions about human rights. We demand that Mariam receive justice and the child protection." This wasn't just a statement. It was pressure. Western media was screaming, "Can African leadership give women justice?" An emergency meeting was called at the presidential palace. The justice minister said, "If we don't take firm action, the world will call us oppressors." The defense minister countered, "If we take a soft approach, the system will become hollow. Tomorrow, another prisoner will adopt this same path." The assembly was divided into two parts. One group wanted Mariam transferred to another prison so complete control could be maintained over the child. The second group argued this incident could be used in the state's favor. Commander Reina Devi, who had witnessed this entire incident, said in a quiet tone, "Mr. President, I am bound by law, but I have seen a mother fight for her child. If we only bring down the sword of law on this, we will lose our people's hearts." This statement echoed through the room. Officers looked at each other. The president remained silent, and in his eyes that sentence flashed, "Now I am not alone." During this time, opposition parties began using this case for their advantage. The opposition leader said in a rally, "When even a woman in solitary confinement isn't safe, whom should the public trust? This government has failed." These words spread like explosions in the media. The president's opponents presented the incident as a symbol of governmental failure, mismanagement, and state insensitivity. Late at night, President Traoré sat alone in his office. Before him were two paths: show the law's strictness by making Mariam an example, or adopt humanity's aspect by saving the mother and child. The first path gave immediate power but made him brutal at the international level. The second path showed weakness, but kept humanity alive. He kept looking outside the window. After the rain, there was moisture on the ground. From afar, church bells and the call to prayer echoed together, as if reminding him that humanity is bigger than law. By morning, no decision could be made. Only this order was given: Mariam Khadija and her child should be kept under special surveillance. Medical facilities should be provided, and the matter should be kept away from public debate. We will take the next step when we reach the roots of truth. This was temporarily like extinguishing a fire, but internal flames were blazing. The state's law and politics had collided, and this collision's echo would resonate in the coming days. Several days had passed since the baby's birth in the prison, but her cries still bounced off the walls. Officers who considered prisoners merely numbers had now softened before that baby girl. But in state assemblies, a storm continued. Law, politics, international pressure, and conspiracies were staring each other down. President Traoré was sleeping less. Before him was a mountain of reports. Intelligence agency reports claimed that behind Mariam was a foreign network wanting to defame the state through the prison. On the other side was Reena Devi's report. This woman is not just a prisoner, she's a mother who shook the system for her last wish. These two statements were beating in the president's heart like two conflicting pulses. The law's strictness and humanity's softness. Then came the moment that was feared. Western media shared pictures of Mariam and her daughter. Headlines read, "Life found a way within African prison walls. Mother sentenced to death gives birth to baby girl. Where is justice?" A wave of sympathy arose on social media. Human rights organizations began protesting. Demonstrations started. International channels debated whether the Traoré government had failed. In this situation, the president called a classified meeting. In the room were the Justice Minister, Defense Minister, Intelligence Agency Head, and Reena Devi. The Justice Minister said, "If we pardon Mariam, it will set a dangerous precedent." "Tomorrow, someone else will do the same," the Defense Minister stated firmly. "This isn't just a baby girl, it's a conspiracy. If we show softness, the enemy will consider us weak." Then Reena Devi spoke. "Mr. President, I have seen everything with my own eyes. This woman is not conspiracy, she is hope. If you hand her and her child over to death, the world will see that a mother was punished with her baby, and that stain will never be washed away." The room fell silent. Eyes were fixed on the president. Late at night, the president sat alone. Rain was falling outside. He looked out the window. Every droplet was falling. He spoke. "The law says she is a criminal, but my heart says she is a mother. Am I the guardian of law or of this nation's soul?" He remembered his own mother, who would remain hungry herself to feed him. The thought came, perhaps every mother is bigger than law. The next morning, the president addressed the nation. His face showed fatigue. His eyes held light. "My countrymen, a woman serving her sentence became a mother in captivity's darkness. She broke the law, but gave birth to life. And life is bigger than death, bigger than crime. I announce that Mariam Khadija will complete her sentence, but her child will be protected. We will provide her education, health, and security. This decision is not weakness, it is humanity." This speech shook the world. Some said the president showed softness. Others said this was a mother's prayer being answered. But international media wrote, "Ibrahim Traoré passed judgment not only in the court of law, but also in the court of the heart." That day, the baby girl's voice echoed through the prison. Reena Devi took her first breath of peace. Mariam held her daughter to her chest and said, "Daughter, you secured your mother's forgiveness." The president sat silently in his chair, but one thing had become clear in his heart. Walls can imprison the body, but life always finds its way. 3 years passed. Mariam completed her sentence with dignity. Her daughter grew up in a special section of the prison, receiving education, love and care from the staff who once saw her mother as merely prisoner number 7. Indy Prastio also completed his sentence. Upon release, he opened a small electrical repair shop and dedicated his life to helping troubled youth avoid the path he once took. Commander Reina Devi wrote a memoir about the incident that became a bestseller across Africa. Titled The Child Who Changed Everything, President Ibrahim Traoré's decision became a case study in universities worldwide about the balance between justice and mercy, between law and humanity. As for Mariam, she was eventually released and reunited with her daughter in a small village. She never spoke publicly about what happened, but neighbors would often see her sitting under a tree, her daughter playing nearby, and hear her whisper, "I am not alone." I am never alone. The prison walls still stood. The ventilation system was completely sealed. The old tunnel was filled with concrete. But the story of those walls, the story of how life found a way in the darkest place, continued to be told. Because sometimes, the greatest strength isn't in the height of our walls, but in our capacity to recognize the humanity within them. 3 weeks before the birth, a French journalist named Elise Bouchard had received an anonymous tip about irregularities at the women's correctional facility. She had been investigating corruption in African prisons for years, and this lead seemed too substantial to ignore. Her contact, a voice distorted over an encrypted phone line, had whispered details that seemed impossible. A woman in complete isolation, 20 weeks pregnant, no male contact recorded, either a miracle or a massive security breach. Elise had done her research. Mariam Khadija's file was surprisingly accessible through back channels. A South African Muslim woman convicted of conspiracy against the state. No family visits in over a year. No male staff assigned to her section. The mathematics didn't work unless something far more sinister or extraordinary was happening. She began making calls to human rights organizations, carefully planting seeds of the story without revealing too much. She knew that if she moved too quickly, the government would shut everything down. But if she waited too long, the story might disappear entirely, along with the woman at its center. What Elise didn't know was that every one of her phone calls was being monitored by President Traoré's intelligence network. Every email was intercepted, every contact traced. In the presidential palace, the intelligence chief laid out Elise's entire communication network on a digital map. Red lines connected her to NGOs in Brussels, human rights lawyers in Geneva, and media outlets in Paris and London. "She's building a narrative," the intelligence chief explained to President Traoré. "In 2 weeks, maybe 3, she'll have enough sources to publish. Once it's out, we lose control of the story." Traoré studied the map with the intensity of a military strategist. "What do we know about her?" "Elise Bouchard, 34 years old, Sorbonne educated, won a European Press Prize for her exposé on Libyan detention centers. She's tenacious, principled, and has powerful connections. She won't be easily intimidated." The president leaned back in his chair. "Then we don't intimidate her. We give her a different story, the truth, but told our way. Before she can paint us as villains, we become the transparent government that investigates itself." It was a risky strategy, but Traoré had built his reputation on calculated risks. He ordered his staff to prepare a comprehensive dossier, everything about the investigation, the tunnel discovery, the DNA evidence, the legal complications. Everything except the identities of his embedded agents. "When the time comes," he said, "we'll invite her in. Let her see the complexity. Let her understand that this isn't about corruption. It's about the impossible happening within our borders." Mariam's lawyer, Yusuf Mandela, no relation to the famous Mandela, though he'd spent his career trying to live up to the name, sat in his cramped office reviewing documents by candlelight. Another power outage, the third this week. He had taken Mariam's case pro bono 3 years ago, believing her conviction was politically motivated. A young Muslim woman who had spoken out against certain government policies, suddenly accused of conspiracy. The trial had been swift, the evidence circumstantial, the sentence harsh. Now, impossibly, she was pregnant. Yusuf's hands trembled as he drafted an appeal. The legal implications were staggering. Under Article 35 of the Criminal Code, a pregnant woman or a mother with a young child could not be executed. This meant Mariam's death sentence was automatically suspended. But there were darker questions. If Mariam had somehow been assaulted while in custody, this would be an unforgivable violation. If she had somehow circumvented the isolation protocols, questions would arise about every aspect of the prison's security, and then there was the spiritual dimension. Yusuf himself was Muslim, and he knew that within his community, the response to Mariam's pregnancy would be complex. Some would see her as a victim deserving compassion. Others would view her actions, regardless of circumstances, as shameful. He had already received threatening phone calls. "Stop representing that woman," a gruff voice had warned. "This case will destroy you." But Yusuf Mandela had not spent 15 years fighting for justice to abandon a client when she needed him most. He continued drafting his appeal, knowing that every word he wrote was being read by government censors, knowing that his phone was likely tapped, knowing that his small act of legal advocacy had become entangled in something much larger than he had ever imagined. Commander Raina Devi had kept a private journal since her first day working in corrections. In 23 years, she had filled 47 leather-bound notebooks with observations, frustrations, small victories, and profound disappointments. The entry dated 3 days after Mariam's baby was born would become the most quoted passage when her memoirs were eventually published. "Today I held a child born in captivity. Her mother is condemned, her father a mystery or a crime. I cannot yet determine which. The baby's eyes opened for just a moment and looked at me with such clarity that I felt judged, not by law or government, but by life itself. I have supervised 2,847 prisoners in my career. I have witnessed violence, redemption, despair, and occasionally grace. But never have I felt so uncertain about my role. Am I a guardian of justice or an enforcer of suffering?" Mariam whispered to me today. "Commander, you have children." I nodded. "Then you understand," she said. "A mother will do anything, even the impossible." I left her cell and wept in the hallway like I haven't wept since my own daughter's miscarriage 10 years ago. One of the younger guards saw me and looked away, embarrassed. But I was not embarrassed. I was human again. After years of trying to be only an officer, this child, this impossible child, has cracked something open in this place. In me. I do not know what comes next, but I know we cannot go back to seeing each other as merely wardens and inmates. Something has shifted. President Traoré will make his decision soon. Whatever he chooses will ripple through this nation. I find myself praying, something I have not done in years, that wisdom will guide him. Not legal wisdom or political calculation, but the deeper wisdom that mothers understand, and men in power often forget. Dr. Bagus Santoso had been the prison physician for 11 years. He had treated knife wounds, overdoses, suicide attempts, and chronic illnesses. He had pronounced death on 17 occasions. He had delivered exactly 0 babies, until Mariam. 3 days after the delivery, he was summoned before the National Medical Ethics Committee. The room was sterile, fluorescent, intimidating. 7 physicians and 3 lawyers sat in judgment. "Dr. Santoso," the committee chair began, "please explain how you came to deliver a child from a prisoner who was supposedly in complete isolation." Bagus had prepared for this moment. He opened his medical file and walked them through every detail. The initial examination when Mariam complained of abdominal pain, the ultrasound that revealed an impossible truth, the consultations with his superiors, the emergency preparations for delivery. At every stage, he explained, I documented my findings and reported through proper channels. I am a physician, not an investigator. My obligation was to the health of my patient and the unborn child. Were you not curious, one committee member asked pointedly, about how this pregnancy occurred? Curious? Yes, but my curiosity is medically irrelevant. A pregnant woman was under my care. She and her child both had the right to the best medical attention I could provide. The questioning continued for 3 hours. They examined his protocols, his decisions during delivery, his postnatal care recommendations. They were looking for mistakes, for negligence, for complicity. But Dr. Santoso had been meticulous. Every decision was defensible. Every procedure was documented. Finally, the committee chair leaned forward. "Doctor, off the record, do you believe this woman was assaulted?" Bagas paused. "Off the record?" I examined her thoroughly. There was no evidence of recent trauma, no physical signs of assault. The pregnancy appeared to be the result of artificial insemination, performed by someone with at least basic medical knowledge. But these are observations, not conclusions. I am not a forensic specialist. And yet you delivered the child without raising immediate alarm? By the time I discovered the pregnancy, the fetus was already 20 weeks developed and healthy. What would you have had me do? Terminate a viable pregnancy because its origins were unclear? That would violate every oath I've taken. The committee deliberated for 30 minutes before returning with their verdict. No professional misconduct, but a formal notation in his file regarding failure to immediately escalate unusual circumstances. It was a slap on the wrist, a bureaucratic compromise. Bagas accepted it with a quiet nod and left the room. Outside, in the parking lot, he sat in his car and allowed himself a moment of reflection. He thought about the baby's first cry, about Mariam's tears of joy mixed with exhaustion, about Commander Rina Devi's obvious emotional struggle. He thought about the Hippocratic oath. First, do no harm. He had delivered a healthy child. In his mind, that was the only verdict that mattered. In a windowless room deep within the presidential complex, a team of intelligence analysts had been working around the clock to map every connection, every possibility, every thread of the conspiracy, if conspiracy it was. Senior analyst Kofi Mensa presented their findings to a small group of the president's most trusted advisors. "We've identified 3 plausible scenarios," Kofi began, projecting a flowchart onto the wall screen. Scenario 1, internal romance. Indy Prastio and Mariam Khadija somehow developed feelings through their limited communication. He provided biological material, she self-inseminated. No external conspiracy, just 2 people making an extraordinary choice. Probability, 40%. Scenario 2, coordinated external plot. A foreign intelligence service or activist organization orchestrated this to embarrass our government. They compromised Indy, provided instructions to Mariam, and are now coordinating media coverage to maximize damage. Probability, 35%. Scenario 3, internal corruption. Someone within the prison system, possibly multiple people, facilitated this pregnancy for personal gain, blackmail, or ideological reasons. The tunnel access, the relaxed surveillance, the timely media leaks, all point to insider involvement. Probability, 25%. One of the advisors interrupted. "You're telling me you don't know?" Kofi shook his head. "We know pieces. We don't know the whole puzzle." Indy's background check shows he was indeed recruited by our network 5 years ago for minor intelligence work. But his radicalization assessment at the time was inconclusive. He could be a loyal agent who made an emotional mistake or a sleeper asset activated for this specific operation. And Mariam? Her profile suggests a true believer, someone who genuinely opposed certain policies. But her psychological evaluation indicates high intelligence and strategic thinking. She's capable of manipulation but also of genuine conviction. The carved message, "I am not alone," could be a cry for help, a coded signal, or simply a statement of fact about her pregnancy. The room fell silent as everyone absorbed the uncertainty. Finally, one advisor spoke what everyone was thinking. "So we're making national policy based on incomplete information." "Welcome to intelligence work," Kofi replied dryly. "We never have complete information. We assess probabilities and recommend actions. Right now, my recommendation is this. Continue the investigation, but prepare for all 3 scenarios. Don't commit to a single narrative until we have definitive proof." It was unsatisfying, but it was honest. And in President Traoré's administration, honest analysis, however uncomfortable, was always preferred to convenient lies. When news of the pregnancy finally became public, leaked by a sympathetic guard to a local journalist, who sold it to an international wire service, the reaction was immediate and divided. In the capital city's main square, 2 demonstrations took place simultaneously, separated by police barricades. On one side, women's rights activists held signs reading, "Mariam is a victim. Investigate the prison. justice for all women on the other side. Conservative religious groups countered, uphold the law. No sympathy for criminals, protect our values. Television debate shows became shouting matches. Radio call-in programs were flooded. Social media fractured into hostile camps, each side accusing the other of missing the point entirely. A prominent feminist scholar wrote in a widely shared op-ed, "Whether we approve of Miriam's choices or not, the fact that a woman in complete state custody became pregnant raises profound questions about prison security and women's vulnerability. We must investigate thoroughly and hold accountable anyone who enabled abuse." A conservative religious leader responded in a sermon broadcast on national radio, "This woman has manipulated the system and made a mockery of justice. If we allow sympathy to override law, we invite chaos. Compassion must be tempered with accountability." Both sides had points. Both sides were partially right. And President Traoré, watching from his office, understood that no decision he made would satisfy everyone. The historical research team uncovered fascinating details about the prison tunnel that added another layer to the mystery. The tunnel had been constructed in 1923 during the colonial era, originally designed as an escape route for prison administrators in case of inmate uprising. It connected the prison to a now-demolished colonial governor's mansion 3 blocks away. In 1961, following independence, the tunnel was officially sealed. But records showed it had been secretly reopened in 1978 during a military coup used to smuggle political prisoners out of the country, then sealed again in 1982. Then, remarkably, there was a classified notation from 1995, "Tunnels surveyed for potential intelligence use. Condition, poor but passable. Recommendation, maintain as covert asset." That notation had President Traoré's predecessor's signature on it. "So our own government kept this tunnel available," Traoré said quietly when presented with this information. "For intelligence purposes." "Yes, sir. And that means various security services may have known about it over the years. The question is, did someone from our current intelligence apparatus use this knowledge to facilitate Miriam's pregnancy?" It was a disturbing possibility. It suggested that the conspiracy, if there was one, might run deeper into the government than anyone wanted to admit. Traoré ordered the tunnel not just sealed, but completely filled with concrete and monitored by sensors. "Whatever its history," he declared, "that passage ends today." The night before President Traoré announced his decision to the nation, he did something unusual. He visited the prison in person, unannounced. With only 2 bodyguards, Commander Rina Devi was shocked to see him. "Mr. President, we had no notification." "I don't want ceremony," Traoré interrupted gently. "I want to see them." "Miriam and the child," Rina hesitated, then nodded. "Follow me." They walked through corridors that seemed to hold their breath. Guards snapped to attention, then looked away, understanding this was not an official inspection. Outside Miriam's cell, Traoré stopped. Through the observation window, he could see her sitting on the simple bed, holding her daughter, singing softly in Arabic, a lullaby perhaps, or a prayer. "Does she know I'm here?" he asked. "No, sir." "Shall I announce you?" Traoré watched for a long moment. The woman who had become the center of national controversy looked in that moment like any mother with her newborn. Exhausted, tender, fierce with protective love. "No," he finally said. "Don't disturb them." He turned to leave, then paused. "Commander Devi, in your professional opinion, not as an officer but as a woman, what should I do?" Rina Devi, who had prepared for many conversations with her president, but never this one, took a breath before answering. "Sir, I believe Miriam broke the law. I believe she manipulated the system. I also believe she is a human being who did what human beings do. She chose life over obedience. If you punish her harshly, you'll satisfy the letter of the law but wound something important in our national character. If you pardon her completely, you'll undermine the justice system. But if you can find a middle path, acknowledge the wrong, enforce the consequences, but protect the innocent child, you might just show that we're capable of both justice and mercy." Traoré smiled slightly. "A middle path. Those are always the hardest to walk." "Yes, sir. But you didn't become president by choosing easy paths." As Traoré left the prison that night, he had his decision. Not perfect, not satisfying to everyone, but human. Imperfectly, courageously human.